Well, it's that time of the year again. Just before we mow the lawn, we're going to make sure to pick all the plantain that we have growing around the property so that we can make those into a tincture that we can then make into a salve that we can use during the time of the year that we don't have it growing, like in winter or in the late fall, early spring when it's difficult to find plantain. If we need to use it during the summertime, we can just pick it out of the lawn. It's a weed. It grows in everybody's yard. I think it grows from zone 3 to zone 9. It grows in full shade. It grows in full sun. It grows in rocky soil, sandy soil. Everybody has it. And let's just take you for a walk here. Here's the lawn. And you can see all these weeds that are in the grass. 99% of those are plantain. Everybody's got this stuff. Here, I'll give you a close-up. These are a broadleaf plantain right here. They kind of have like a rosette base where they all just come growing out from one central point. They don't grow up onto a stem. They just grow on the ground. I'll break off a leaf. If you look at the leaf, try to get a better. It's very ribbed, it's smooth, there's no hairs on it. The backside has these very pronounced ribs on them. Also smooth and no hair. Also, if I break the leaf at the base, see these little hairs that stick out of the leaf? That's another way you can tell you've got a plantain. I'm gonna try to get this in focus. There we go. Those are those little ribs in the leaf. So when you break it, you get these little strings, and that's one way of identifying that it's also plantain. But anyway, we're gonna pick a bunch of these. This is a broadleaf plantain. You can tell because it's a much wider leaf. There's also narrow leaf plantain. I think there's like 12 different types or 10 different types of plantain. There's only 2 in our area really that we find, the narrow leaf and these broadleaf. So we're gonna pick a bunch of these and we'll bring it all in the house, get it washed up. You can either add these to a salad, or you can make a poultice if you need them right away, or you can make it into a tincture, you can make it into a salve. It's got a lot of medical benefits that we'll go over later. Let's pick a bunch of these and we'll get back to you. So here's a good example of a narrow leaf or an English plantain. The leaves are a lot more narrow and they're kind of like spear shaped. They're heavily ribbed, the veins on the front and on the back side. You can see they're very pronounced. And then these are easy to spot when they're starting to go to seed because they have these really long stems with seed heads. So this is what the seed head looks like before it goes to flower. And then here's one that's starting to go to flower. You can see the different heads and how long that stem goes. So they're very, very tall stems. But this is the narrow leaf plantain, and it has the same medicinal benefits as the broadleaf plantain. We just don't have as many of this type growing around our property as we do the broadleaf, so we tend to just pick the broadleaf plantain when we're making tinctures or using it as a poultice. But anyway, that's just another type of plantain. Although it looks very different, it does have a lot of similarities. And another thing too is when you pull a leaf and you look at the end where you pulled, you see these little strings. That's another way to tell that you've got a plantain. Those little threads that happen when you break a leaf off. just to show a close-up of the difference between a narrow leaf plantain and a broadleaf plantain. They look like two totally different plants, but if you look closely, you can see the similarities. How that ribbing is very much the same. How when you break the stem, they both have strings that show on the stem when they're broken, which isn't always a guarantee. Sometimes you can break it clean, but typically you're going to get those strings. And anyway, let's get this back in focus. That's the difference. They look similar. This is what we have a majority of, so this is what we're going to be picking today. Once we get the lawn cleaned up, we'll be able to mow and then take our grass trimmings and use those in our compost. We finished collecting all the plantain that we're going to collect for the day. We've washed it and we're just laying it out to dry some of the excess water so that when we mix this with oil to make our tincture, we don't have to worry about the water floating up to the top. It's just going to be the plant and the olive oil. And I have a leaf set aside here. I got a bug bite while we were out picking the plantain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use plantain as a poultice to treat the bug bite. What it'll do is reduce the inflammation. It's antimicrobial. It also is a drawing agent. So any poisons that are in, like from a bee bite or another type of bite, it'll try to draw some of that out and help heal it a little bit faster. So I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. Just take a leaf and chew this up. And then I'm going to take the poultice and put it right in the center of my gauze here. And then I'll just apply the gauze to the bug bite. And you don't have to worry about chewing this stuff up. You can add it to salads. It's very edible.
So now that we have our plantain leaves all rinsed and dried, what we're going to do is break these up and get them into the jar. So you can break them up by hand. You can take and just rip them and put them into the jar, or you can use a knife and chop them up, which is what I'm going to do. Now the reason that I'm breaking the leaves up before I put them in the jar is it's going to allow them to diffuse better into the oil. So we're going to be filling the jar with olive oil once we get all of our plantain leaves chopped up. So let me get that done and get them in the jar, and I'll be right back. So now that I have my quart jar filled with my cut up plantain, I'm going to add the oil. Now I'm using an extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil is what is normally recommended. I'm going to be doing a solar infusion. So again, this is something you can do on top of the stove using a double boiler. There's a lot of information out there if that's the way you choose to do it. But I prefer to do it as a solar infusion, which means it's going to take a little bit longer. So let's get this full of oil. And what we want to do is make sure that we don't have any air pockets or missing areas that are not going to have oil. So we're going to fill this all the way up, and then we're going to use our spoon handle to make sure we get any air bubbles out. And this is going to take a lot of oil since we're doing a whole quart here. And we want to make sure that it's fully in. Now what I normally do is the day after I make this, I do another check on it and see if I do have any issues. I'm going to be putting this on a windowsill in a warm, sunny place and letting it sit for 2 weeks. And the day after I do it, and every day until the 2 weeks are up, I'm going to give this a shake. And if it appears that second day that it needs a little bit more olive oil, I'll go ahead and top it off. So as you can see, this was full of olive oil and now it's not covered. So we're going to put a little more in until we get it to the right spot. So let me get this finished and I'll be right back. So now that we have the plantain all covered in oil and we've made sure that we don't have any air bubbles, what I'm going to do is we're going to cover this. I'm just using a nice plastic canning jar cover, And we're gonna go put this on a nice, warm, sunny windowsill for 2 weeks, and I'll see you then. It's been a little over 2 weeks, and we have our plantain infusion completed. Now the next step is going to be removing the plantain leaves from the olive oil. And to do that, I'm just going to use this strainer and this measuring cup to get that taken care of. While this finishes draining, we're going to take the rest of our ingredients and get them into our pot. We have a 1/4 cup of beeswax that has been shredded and then packed into the cup. Now, I've had people ask, why don't we just weigh our beeswax? Well, our measurements are done by volume, not by weight. So we're going to use a cup of this oil and a 1/4 cup of the beeswax. And I have learned from experience to put the beeswax in first into the pot, because if you put the oil in first, when you put the beeswax, inevitably it does splash. So I have poured off a cup of the olive oil, and now that's ready to go into the beeswax. So I have the beeswax broken up into the bottom of the pot, and let me get this oil poured in. Now we're going to take our mixture of beeswax and infused oil, put that on the stove over a very low heat, and let it melt the wax. The reason we want to keep this at a low heat and not rush it is so that we don't scorch the mixture. It may take a little bit longer, but it's well worth the wait. Now, plantain doesn't have to be made into a salve. It can be used fresh in salads, soups, or sauces. You can use it fresh as a poultice. You can make a tea out of the leaves by boiling the leaves in water and then taking a cloth into the cooled water and using that on insect bites or cuts. Because of its antimicrobial properties, it allows it to help fight infections. It also is great for drawing out things like slivers and things like that. So what we're doing is making our salve today. We'll be using the salve for its drawing purposes and its antimicrobial purposes. That's going to let us use it for bee stings, spider bites, insect bites. Use it if we get a sliver that we can't quite get, to draw that sliver out. It's also, because of those antimicrobial features, going to be able to be used for minor cuts, scrapes, abrasions, that kind of thing. So let's get this all melted down and we'll be back to you in just a minute. As you can see, the olive oil and the wax have melted together nicely. Now what we're going to do is a quick little test to make sure this has the viscosity that we want. So what we're going to do is take about a tablespoon of our mix. We're going to put it onto a plate. I'm going to put this in the freezer for a few minutes, and then we'll be able to see what it's going to be like when it sets. So I've taken this out of the freezer after about 1 minute. It's got a great consistency, perfect for what we need. So now all I'm going to do is scrape this back into the pot, get it melted down so we can get it into our containers. Now that we have our beeswax and our plantain olive oil mix all together, we're going to put them in some containers. Now these are 1 ounce storage containers that have screw off tops. This is what we have selected to use. It's what we normally use, and I'll make sure to leave a link for these in the description. Let me get these filled and I'll show you what they look like before they're fully set. So we ended up with 8 ounces. We're going to take these containers, get them in the fridge to set, and then we'll show them to you when they're ready. We've had these out of the fridge since last night, and as you can see, they set up very nicely. I can turn them upside down, nothing comes out, and they have a really nice texture to them. They're going to be a great addition to our medicine cabinet. Now, the whole purpose of making this salve is because plantain isn't something that we have available here through the winter. And if you get some kind of a bug bite, spider bite, whatever you might cut, you might want to use this for. You want to make sure that you have something on hand until you can get the fresh plants again. So we have ultimately come up with 8 1-ounce containers. These are going to go into our medicine cabinet. Some will be kept for us and some may be given as gifts. So until next time, if you have any kind of natural remedies that you'd like to learn more about, any salves or tinctures you'd like to see us make, please make sure you leave a message in the comments and share this video out to other people who you think might enjoy it. Other than that, everybody, until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy our videos and want to help us out, please like this video and subscribe. If you know someone who would like our videos, make sure to share, as this really helps our channel out. Again, thanks, and see you soon.